مصدقني لو مش مصدقني اسأل طلب.
Boys and girls, good morning. Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning. Good morning.
Do you hear me? What about the
Yes.
sound?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you ready to start our session?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
شكرا يا مستر.
ميس هو احنا نذاكر في الستوري؟
أنا رابعة. عشان ما أقفلش الصوت من فضلكم مش عايزة حد يتكلم. Be quiet and just look at the screen. Okay? Okay?
Okay.
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 طيب. تعالوا نفتكر مع بعض كده آخر حاجة في chapter 4. And Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson went to Mr. Breckenridge's shop to ask him about the geese, right? And he told them that he bought the geese from Mrs. Wackshott. Okay? chapter number 5. يلا نقرا كده مع بعض. سامعيني كويس؟
Yes.
Okay. Line number 1. In the street, Holmes stopped. Suddenly, he wasn't angry. He began to laugh. You see, Watson, he said, Breckenridge didn't want to tell me Mrs. Wackshott's name and address at first. Mr. Breckenridge ما كانش عايز يقول له على النيم وعلى الادرس بتاع Mrs. مين؟ Wackshott. At first, but later, when he saw he could easily get a pound from me, he told me everything. And he said something very interesting when he got angry. Did you hear? ايه الحاجة اللي قالها مستر بريكنريدج بسبب ان هو كان متضايق ان many people come and talk about the geese؟ قال ايه؟ Other people are asking questions about those geese. Suddenly, there was a lot of noise from Mr. Breckenridge's shop behind us. We looked back at it. لسه مستر هولمز ودكتور واتسون ما تحركوش من المكان بتاع بريكنريدج، سمعوا noise. Okay. Breckenridge stood tall and angry in front of his shop door. لقى إيه قدام المحل بتاعه؟ A weak little man stood in front of him in the street. Look you, Breckenridge shouted. I don't want. I don't want to hear any more about those geese. Mrs. Wackshott can come and speak to me when she wants, but not you. You have nothing to do with me. Did I get the geese from you? أنا ما أخدتش منك الجيس، أنا أخدتها من Mrs. Wackshott، هي بس اللي تيجي تتكلم معايا. فالويك ليتل مان ده اللي لابس الكوت ده بيقول له no, but one was my goose. واحد فيهم بتاعتي. I tell you, cried the little man. Then ask Mrs. Wackshott for it. اسألها هي، مالكش دعوة بإيه. But she told me, ask Mr. Breckenridge for it. Well, that's nothing to do with me. I don't want to hear any more from you. Do you understand? Now go away. Breckenridge closed his shop door angrily. and the little man ran off down the dark street. خلاص بريكنريدج قفل الباب والراجل مشي للستريت. دلوقتي اللي بيتكلم في line number 7 Mr. Holmes to Dr. Watts. بيقول إيه بقى Mr. Holmes؟ Maybe we don't have to visit Mrs. Watts in Brexton Road after all, said Holmes to me quietly. Let's talk to that man. Maybe he can help us. تعالى نتكلم مع little man اللي كان واقف قدام الشوب بتاع بريكنريدج. Holmes walked quickly up behind the little man and put a hand on his shoulder.
داخلة.
نعم؟ نعم؟
الشاشة مش واضحة.
الشاشة واضحة جدا، الشاشة واضحة جدا والتصوير واضح جدا، وأنا بحط أهو إيديا تحت كل وورد وأنا بقراها. يلا نركز. And put a hand on his shoulder. The man stopped and looked over his shoulder at us. His face was white. الراجل بقى بيتكلم مع Mr. Holmes بيقول له Who are you? What do you want? He asked weakly.
وقتك نايمة ونص صاحتي لسه دخلت أشوف الزوم الساعة كام لقيته 11 تدخل.
نكمل. ممكن ما حدش يتكلم من فضلكم؟ نكمل. Excuse me, said Holmes, but I heard your question to that shop owner. I think I can help you. Who are you and how can you help me? قال له my name is Sherlock Holmes and it's my job to know things other people don't know. A little man بيقول له but you can't know anything about this. Excuse me, I know everything. You want to find 24 geese. انت عايز ال 24 geese. Mrs. Wackshott of Brixton Road sold them to Mr. Breckenridge. اللي بعتهم Wackshott لبريكنريدج. He sold them to Mr. Windygate, the owner of the Alpha, and Mr. Windygate sold them to the people in his goose club. فطبعا كده Mr. Holmes knew everything about the case. بصوا بقى little weak man بيقول له إيه؟ Oh, sir, this is wonderful. I'm very happy to meet you, said the little man excitedly. You are right. I'm very interested in those geese, more than I can say. Why don't you go هنا اللي بيتكلم Mr. Holmes بيقول للittle man Why don't we go to a warm room in my house for a talk then? I don't like standing here in the cold street. هيبتدوا دلوقتي Mr. Holmes والweak man يروحوا البيت عنده. Holmes put out his arm and a cab stopped for us. Cab يعني taxi. But before we go, can you please tell us your name? The little man looked at Holmes and then at me before he answered. قال له اسمه إيه بقى؟ John Robinson. He said, No, said Holmes quietly. We'd like to know your real name, please. The strangers اللي هو الراجل الغريب face changed وشه اتغير from white to red وشه احمر وحس ان هو فهم ان هو بيكذب عليه. Very well, my real name is James Ryder, he said. Oof. Well, said Holmes. انت بقى the assistant manager of the Cosmopolitan Hotel? Now, let's get into the cab and go home. Then I can tell you everything you want to know. تعال بقى معايا البيت وانا هقول لك كل حاجة انت عايز تعرفها عن الكيس دي. So we got into the cab and went home. Ryder was excited but said nothing. Holmes didn't speak at all in the cab. طيب هنبتدي بقى دلوقتي نحل مع بعض ال questions. Please هاتوا لي يا ولاد البوكلت أو الشيت page 36. عايزة الشيت page 36. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
يا ولاد تمام؟ تمام؟ Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 1. Item. Item. Do you hear me? Item.
Yes.
Item. طيب نادر. نادر.
Yes. Yes.
Do you hear me يا نادر؟
Yes.
يلا اتفضل يا نادر read question number 1.
What did Mr. Breckenridge say to Mr. Holmes when he got angry?
مستر بريكنريدج قال ايه لماستر هولمز اما كان متضايق؟ يلا اقرا لنا كده الانسر اهي من على السكرين يا نادر.
He said that other people are asking a question about the geese.
He said that other people are asking questions about the geese. Thank you. حمزة محمد. حمزة. طيب آسر. انتوا مش سامعيني يا ولاد؟ طب مريم أحمد ها؟
نعم يا مس.
يلا يا مريم read question number 2.
Who else asked Mr.
Breckenridge
about
the geese. مين تاني سأل مستر بريكنريدج عن الجيس؟ يلا قولي لي الأنسر كده.
A weak little man.
A weak little man. وكان اسمه ايه؟ جيمس. جيمس رايدر. Thank you. Question number 3. محمد خالد. محمد خالد. طب محمد مجدي.
أيوة يا مس.
يلا يا محمد read question number 3.
Who did Mrs.
Oakshott
sell the geese to?
ها بعتها لمين؟
To Mr. Breckenridge.
Thank you to Mr. Breckenridge. ريماس عبد الدايم. يلا يا ريماس. ريماس do you hear me؟
ميس هم قالوا في الشات.
طيب سلمان. سلمان. يلا يا سلمان question number 4.
What was the name
What was the name that the little man
told Holmes
at first. ايه الاسم اللي قالوه له في الأول؟ What was his real name؟ وإيه اسمه الحقيقي؟ الاسم اللي قالوه له في الأول جون روبنسون. وهو اسمه الحقيقي إيه؟
جيمس
رايدر. جيمس رايدر. Thank you. مؤمن. مؤمن.
نعم ميس.
يلا يا مؤمن question number 5.
ميس ينفع أنا أحل
مؤمن.
نعم ميس.
يلا اتفضل question number 5.
ده مش جاي لي رقم 5.
اهو يا حبيبي اخر واحد. who was James رايدر. مين بقى جيمس رايدر؟ he was the يلا يلا يا
He
مؤمن.
wasn't
He
right.
was the ايه؟ He was the ايه؟ assistant. He was the ايه يا حبيبي؟ assistant manager of
He was
the assistant manager
of
of the
the
Cosmopolitan Hotel. تمام. True false. Number 1.
ينفع أحل أنا؟
يلا حبيبي حل. اتفضل.
Breckenridge told Holmes
Mrs. Oakeshott
Mrs. Watson name
easily at first.
is at first
False. False. Number 2. Who wants to answer? يلا حبيبتي. Number 2.
A weak little man asked Breckenridge about the geese. Yes.
Thank
True.
you. حلوة قوي. قولي لي يلا number 3 كمان.
Mrs. Wendy bought the geese from Mrs. Oakeshott. False.
False. What's your name?
مريم عادل.
Excellent يا مريم. Excellent. Reading بتاعك هايل. طب number 4 يا مريم.
The little man's real name was John Robinson. False.
False. And the real name is James Ryder. Thank you. طيب. Who wants to answer?
Miss Auntie, Miss Russia?
No يا حبيبتي. I am Miss May.
Oh.
يلا who wants to answer?
حبيبة أنا حبيبة.
حبيبة؟ حبيبة هنا يا ولاد؟
أنا
طيب لمار هنا. لمار.
حاضر يا ميس.
يلا يا لمار قولي لي الكومنتس. Who to whom and where.
Don't want to hear any more about those geese.
Who said?
Mr. Breckenridge
To
James Ryder
James Ryder. Where?
in front of Breckenridge's
shop. Thank you. طيب نريمان هنا؟
ميس أنا حبيبة هنا.
حبيبة هنا؟ يلا حبيبة. يلا number 2.
Maybe we don't have to visit Mr.
Oakeshott in Brexiter Road after all. Who said?
Mr. Holmes.
To
Dr. Watson.
To Dr. Watson. Where?
In the street.
In the street. Thank you. Who wants to answer? Who wants to answer?
Me.
يلا حبيبي. It's my job.
It's my job
To know things other people don't know. Who said? Who said?
In the street.
Who said?
Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Holmes. To
James Ryder.
James Ryder. Where?
In the street.
In the street. Thank you. طيب. Who wants to answer? محمد. يلا يا محمد. Complete. تفضل. Breckenridge
didn't want to tell Mr. Holmes. Mrs. Oakeshott
name and address it first. Thank you. Nader, number 2.
Holmes walked quickly up behind the little
man
and put his hand
on his shoulder. Thank you. محمد خالد. طب مريم أحمد. سلمان. مريم أحمد. يلا يا مريم.
أنا مريم أنا حبيبي.
اتفضلي.
Holmes put out his
Put
arm
out
and
his arm and
a tap
cap stopped
for
for them. Thank you.
ميس ينفع أحل؟
اتفضلي.
Stranger's face changed from white to red.
برافو عليكي. Stranger's face changed from white to red.
بس احنا هناخد فصل 6.
طيب مريم عادل. مريم.
نعم. ألو.
Wait a minute يا مريم.
نعم ماشي.
ثانية واحدة يا مريم.
ماشي.
مريم.
نعم.
يلا يا مريم كده اقري معانا التشابتر من الأول.
In the street, Holmes stopped. In the street, Holmes stopped. Suddenly, he wasn't angry. He began to laugh. You see, Watson, he said, Breckenridge didn't want to tell me Mrs. Oxshot's name and address at first, but later, when he saw he could easily get a pound from me, he told me everything, and he said something very interesting when he got angry. Did you hear? Other people are asking questions about those keys. Suddenly, there was a loud noise from Breckenridge's shop behind us. We looked back at it. Breckenridge stood tall and angry in front of his shop door. A weak little man stood in front of him in the street. Look, you, Breckenridge shouted. I don't want to hear any more about these geese. Mrs. Oxshott can come and speak to me when she wants, but not you. You have nothing to do with it. Did I get geese from you? No, but one was my goose, I tell you, cried the little man. Then ask Mrs. Oxshott for it. But she told me ask Mr. Breckenridge for it. Well, that's nothing to do with me. I don't want to hear any more from you. Do you understand? Now go away. Breckenridge closed his shop door angrily, and the little man ran off down the dark street. Maybe we don't have to visit Mrs. Oxshott on Brixton Road after all, said Holmes quietly. Let's talk to the man. Maybe he can help us. Holmes walked quite quickly up behind the little man and put a hand on his shoulder. The man stopped and looked over his shoulder at us. His face was white. Who are you? What do you want? He asked weakly. Holmes put out his arm and the cab stopped for us. But before we go, can you please tell us your name? The little man looked at Holmes and then at me before he answered. John Robinson, he said. No, said Holmes quietly. I would like to know your real name, please. The stranger's face changed from white to red. Very well. My name is James Ryder. He said, well, said Holmes, assistant manager of the Cosmopolitan hotel. Now let's get into the cab and go home. Then I can tell you everything you want to know. So we got into the cab and went home. Ryder was excited but said nothing. Holmes didn't speak at all in the cab.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, boys and girls.
Stop!